Imagine spending centuries meditating, right? Trying to like rewrite your very soul.
Oh, yeah. That sounds exhausting.
It really does. You sacrifice every human pleasure for spiritual enlightenment,
Mhm.
only to find out that the universe's hard drive simply won't let you save the file.
Right.
Because we live in an era that is absolutely obsessed with the concept of the upgrade. You know, you download a meditation app to become calmer, or you read a productivity book to become a machine.
Exactly. You try a new morning routine to become this completely different, highly optimized person.
Yeah. We treat our lives and our personalities really like they're just software waiting for the next patch.
It's this pervasive assumption that human nature is infinitely malleable, that with enough willpower or the right life hack, you can just fundamentally overwrite who you are.
Which is what makes the source material for today's deep dive so incredibly jarring.
Yeah.
Because it looks at all of that self-optimization, all that striving, and essentially says, you are completely missing the architectural rules of reality.
It really does pull the rug out from under you.
It really does. So welcome back to the deep dive. For you, our resident learner, we know you love those aha moments that completely shift your perspective without bogging you down in overwhelming jargon. And today, we have a highly concentrated dose of exactly that.
We're looking at a text from 2019 by Feng. It's titled The Nature of Celestial Beings. And it is this fascinating, almost surgical breakdown of existence.
Yeah, our mission today is to map out this text's fundamental architecture of reality. We're going to look at how what it calls life structures dictate exactly who and what we are.
Right, and then we're going to explore what the author promises is a shortcut to reaching a higher celestial plane of existence.
A shortcut that sounds amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
But finally, we are going to unravel a massive philosophical twist at the end of the text that honestly gave me whiplash.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So starting with the blueprint. Before we can even talk about becoming a celestial being, we have to understand the text's absolute unbreakable rule of reality. Like what actually makes a human, or a rock a rock.
Well, according to Feng, it all comes down to one equation. Nature is simply the characteristic of a structure. That is the foundational rule here.
Okay.
The kind of structure present dictates exactly the kind of nature there is. It's not random. It is totally locked in.
And the text applies this to literally everything, right? Like gods have divine natures, Buddhas have Buddhist ones, demons have demonic ones, people have human ones.
And beasts have animal ones, yeah.
Right. But it doesn't even stop at living beings. Mountains have mountainous natures, lakes have watery ones, soil has an earthly one, stones have rocky ones.
What's fascinating here is how systematically the text scales reality. I mean, it doesn't just make sweeping mystical claims. It actually points to hard sciences and historical classification systems to prove its point.
Oh, right. The medicinal stuff.
Exactly. It explicitly references the Compendium of Materia Medica, noting that it introduces over 500 medicines, and every single one of them has its own specific, unchangeable medicinal property or nature based entirely on its physical composition.
And then it brings in the periodic table of elements, which I thought was a wild turn for a spiritual text.
It really is.
It points out that all 118 chemical elements have their own distinct characteristics. Like, you can't just wish for lead to have the nature of gold.
Right, because their atomic structures are different.
Exactly. Their structures are different, so their natures are different. It makes me think of this in terms of hardware and software, but on a much more absurd scale.
How so?
Well, the structure the text is talking about is the physical hardware. The nature is the software that runs on it. A lot of modern self-help acts like you could just install new software whenever you want.
By downloading a new personality.
Yeah, exactly. But if your hardware is a toaster, it doesn't matter how badly you want it to run the latest iOS. You can't just meditate a toaster into becoming a smartphone. The underlying structure has to change first.
That is a great analogy. The text states bluntly, no life's nature will change if its structure remains the same. If you want one kind of life to transform into another, its structure must be altered toward that desired end. There is literally no cheating the system.
Which establishes a pretty intimidating rule for the universe, honestly. I mean, if your structure dictates exactly what you are, how does a human ever change their structure to become something higher? How do you upgrade from human hardware to celestial hardware?
Well, this is where we move from the rule of structures to the sheer impossibility of altering them through conventional means. The text explicitly says that direct physical alteration is impossible unless you perform genetic surgery.
Genetic surgery.
Yeah, but the catch is when we're talking about a life, a capital L life, We aren't just talking about flesh and bone.
Right. The text argues that a life structure is non-material. It's invisible and intangible. You cannot put it on an operating table.
Exactly.
So we are forced to look away from the physical body entirely. To change the structure, it says you must change the consciousness. But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Well, how do you even begin to edit something as abstract and slippery as consciousness? If I want to change my physical body, I can lift weights. I can see the muscle grow. Where do you even grab hold of consciousness to change it from a human one to a celestial one?
Transforming consciousness is not a weekend project. It cannot be reached without centuries of self-improvement and self-refinement.
Centuries.
Centuries. And the reason it takes centuries is because of how deeply embedded consciousness is. It doesn't just sit in your brain. The text says consciousness penetrates into blood cells, into the bone marrow. It penetrates time and space itself.
It even mentions it penetrates into information retention space, which sounds incredibly sci-fi to me.
It really does. Think of information retention space as a sort of cosmic cloud backup where the universe stores the permanent data of your soul.
Okay, wow.
Every thought, every impulse leaves a permanent energetic residue there, as well as tracking across your entire life trajectory. The scale of what you are trying to manually edit is so enormous, it's almost incomprehensible.
Yeah, and the components of consciousness are so vast that the text says it's incredibly difficult to even distinguish between human thoughts and celestial thoughts. They're just too ambiguous.
To illustrate this confusion, the text uses a proverb. It says, "The true face of the mountain Lu is lost to my sight, for it is right in this mountain that I reside."
Oh, meaning you're so deeply embedded inside your own human consciousness, you are literally the mountain trying to look at itself.
Yes, exactly. You're trying to use the flawed tool of the human mind to fix the flawed tool of the human mind.
It's a closed loop.
It is. Without a higher level being to guide you and point the way out, you are completely blind to your own structure.
Which sounds incredibly bleak, honestly. If it takes centuries of grueling effort just to tell the difference between human and celestial thoughts, the average person has zero chance. But this leads directly into the author's proposed solution.
The promised shortcut.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, because after establishing how heavy and impossible this spiritual transformation is, the text says there is a shortcut to becoming a celestial that bypasses traditional spirituality entirely.
And the shortcut is simply to follow celestial nature.
Just follow it.
Oh.
And the text goes out of its way to explicitly list what you do not need to do. You do not need to read heavy books on celestial cultivation. You don't need to spend your limited lifetime trying to understand complex principles of truth.
No meditating.
Right. No immortality pills, no praying to gods, no worshiping Buddha, no reciting scriptures every day. The text literally claims that even an illiterate person can achieve this shortcut simply by acting out the nature of a celestial.
Which is wild.
It is. Now, if you are listening to this and rolling your eyes because just act like a celestial sounds like the cosmic equivalent of a cheap fake it till you make an Instagram post, you aren't alone. I had the exact same thought. But the Way of Things framework actually tries to back this up mechanically.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a radical democratization of enlightenment.
How so?
Well, throughout history, spiritual ascension has almost always been gatekept. It requires literacy to read the sacred texts, or wealth to afford the time to meditate instead of working, or strict adherence to a religious hierarchy. Weifeng removes all academic and religious barriers to entry for the everyday person.
So if I want to use this shortcut and just mimic a celestial, I need to know what I'm aiming at. Like, does the text actually give us a clear picture of what a celestial is, or is it just some vague, glowing entity?
It's very specific. Before we get to the behavior, the text outlines a taxonomy of existence to show us exactly where we stand. It divides people into 5 groups.
Right. Ignorant commoners, ladies, mortals, sages, and celestials.
And it even subdivides the celestials themselves into 5 distinct types. There are ghost celestials, human celestials, land celestials, deity celestials, and super celestials.
Wait, there are 5 types of celestials?
Yeah, and this isn't just a list, it's an evolutionary ladder. Like, a ghost celestial might still be heavily bound to earthly remnants and energetic ties, while a super celestial operates on a plane of total, unfathomable cosmic integration.
Okay, but the author specifically zeroes in on one goal for us, right?
Yeah.
He says he's only going to explain the nature of celestials in what he calls the 1,000-year world.
Yes. The 1,000-year world is the entry-level celestial tier, and it is the easiest state for humans to reach. The promise is that if you can just follow the nature of these specific celestials while you're alive, you will join them in the thousand-year world to live a celestial life after you die.
So the underlying mechanic of the shortcut is that by mimicking the software of a celestial, your hardware will eventually upgrade to match it in the next life through continuous structural resonance.
That is the idea, yeah.
So, okay, I'm sold on the shortcut. But acting celestial still sounds like a trap to me. Usually when texts offer a shortcut, the fine print is a nightmare of impossible behavioral rules. What is the actual checklist here?
The text gives us 8 specific characteristics to follow.
And let me tell you, as I read through these, they are not your typical be kind to your neighbor Sunday school rules.
No, they're not. The first few seem somewhat standard for Eastern philosophy, though. They follow what is predestined, they are open, they leave things to fate, and they are free and unfettered.
Right.
They conduct themselves limitlessly, following situations and acting flexibly.
Let's actually pause on that, because we need to explain why leaving things to fate is considered a structural upgrade. Why does being flexible alter your cosmic standing?
In the context of this universe, resisting fate causes friction. When a human resists their current circumstances, they generate massive amounts of energetic turbulence, anger, anxiety, scheming. That turbulence anchors your consciousness to the human plane. By leaving things to fate, you stop resisting the current. You mechanically reduce the friction of human existence, which begins to lighten your non-material structure.
Wow, okay. So, moving on, they possess nothing, they never do anything, yet all things happen through them because they follow the Tao.
And for those unfamiliar, the Tao can be thought of as the underlying flow or the absolute principle of the universe.
Oh, it's like the current of a river. You don't need to paddle if you just let the water carry you.
Yeah.
That all sounds very zen. But then we hit characteristic number 3.
Ah, yes.
Which is that they are amorous, yet never attach importance to affection. And I have to push back on this.
Go for it.
How can someone be highly amorous, like full of romantic, passionate energy, but place absolutely zero importance on affection? It just sounds like a recipe for using people and hurting them.
It does, from a human perspective, where love and affection are deeply intertwined with possession and expectation. But the text proposes experiencing the energy of the universe without being bound by it.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It's the difference between appreciating the profound warmth of a fire and trying to put the fire in your pocket to keep it forever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Affection, in human terms, implies attachment. The celestial nature experiences the amorousness, the beauty and connection of the moment, but completely detaches from the need to hold on to it when the moment passes.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. But then look at characteristic number 6, which is even more jarring to me. It says they feel no mercy or pity, but are natural and unrestrained.
That is a tough one for people.
It is. How can a highly evolved, enlightened being have absolutely no mercy and no pity? We usually equate spiritual advancement with, infinite compassion. To me, a lack of mercy sounds like the definition of a sociopath, not a saint.
This is where the text demands we separate human morality from cosmic architecture. From the text perspective, pity and mercy are actually arrogant, human emotional entanglements. Yes, arrogant. If you feel pity, you are judging a situation as wrong or tragic based on your limited human standards. You are essentially telling the universe that it made a mistake.
Oh, I never thought of it like that.
Right. But a celestial, who follows the Tao completely, sees the universe exactly as it is supposed to be. If a storm washes away a tree, the sky doesn't feel pity for the tree, it's just the natural course of things.
So this isn't about being cruel or malicious.
Not at all. It's about a total, radical detachment. It is viewing the universe with a kind of cheerful neutrality rather than being bogged down by human judgments of good and bad.
Which ties perfectly into the final 2 traits. They neither contend or argue, but just associate with other celestials. And they behave with an elegant demeanor, talking cheerfully and humorously.
Right. They aren't somber monks suffering for enlightenment. They are cheerful and humorous precisely because they are completely unburdened by human anxieties like pity, affection, or the need to be right in an argument.
It sounds like an incredibly peaceful, if emotionally detached way to exist. Just floating through life, cheerful, humorous, unfettered by possessions or deep emotional anchors. And as a listener, you might be thinking, okay, I can try that.
Sure.
I can try to be more flexible, stop arguing with strangers on the internet, and let go of my attachments. I could use this cosmic shortcut.
But just as you start feeling comfortable with this accessible shortcut, The text forces us into a brutal physical reality check.
It really does. It's
Yeah.
like the author sets up this beautiful, achievable theory and then violently pulls the rug out from under us. We move from theory to extreme reality.
Yeah, the text explicitly admits that understanding these 8 traits theoretically and logically is easy, but achieving them, it says, it is extremely difficult.
And then the author poses these vivid, really visceral hypothetical situations to test what true detachment actually requires. He asks, could you truly follow what is predestined and be free and unfettered if you were locked in a prison cell?
Yeah, if you were forced to eat nothing but grass roots, if everyone around you scolded and bullied you, and if you were surrounded by rampant snakes and scorpions, could you still be open and cheerful then?
Just picture that.
Yeah.
You are starving in a literal snake pit, being tortured, and you are supposed to maintain the elegant, humorous demeanor of a celestial who feels no pity for their own situation.
It's an insane standard.
It is. And the author pushes it even further. He asks, could you really possess nothing and be totally unfettered if you knew you were going to die in the next second? Would you truly have zero worries for the loved ones you are leaving behind? Zero fear, zero regrets.
It exposes the massive gap between human intellectual understanding and fundamental biological reality.
Exactly.
We can understand the idea of having no fear of death, but the human hardware is biologically programmed to survive. It's programmed to panic in a snake pit and to protect its kin. The text is pointing out that conducting oneself with no limit, no mercy, and no sadness goes entirely against the grain of human structure.
So what does this all mean? I mean, the author spent all this time explaining the architecture of reality, outlined the impossible centuries of meditation required, offered us this beautiful, simple shortcut of just acting celestial, and then proves, with the snake pit example, that it's physically impossible for our hardware to run that software. Was the shortcut just a trap?
This raises an important question about the author's true intent, because here is the ultimate twist, the final conclusion of the text. After listing the 8 celestial traits that we supposedly just need to follow, Shufeng states unequivocally, humans can never achieve any of these 8 characteristics of celestial nature, not even one of them.
Not even one. He literally gives us the checklist and then immediately tells us we can't complete a single item on it.
He admits that humans occasionally show signs of celestial natures, like we might have moments of true detachment or perfect flow, but he dismisses them as just flashes of light that disappear quickly. They are anomalies. They are not a fundamental change in our nature.
The conclusion of the source material is jarringly blunt. It states, only people who are born with celestial roots can become celestial beings. If you aren't born with the hardware, you are never running the software.
Yep. The text quotes the proverb, a leopard cannot change its spots, and then delivers its final instruction to humanity. It tells us to stop our wishful thinking and just be honest people.
Just be an honest person.
Oh.
That is where this grand cosmic exploration finally lands. It is a massive paradigm shift, especially for us today.
It really is. It's the exact opposite of the modern self-help culture we talked about at the beginning. It completely rejects the doctrine that you can be whatever you want to be. Instead, it is a doctrine of radical, unavoidable acceptance of your current structural state.
It really is an incredible journey this text takes you on.
Yeah.
Let's recap the sheer scale of what we've covered in this deep dive. We started by learning the strict structural hardware of reality, that nature is inevitably bound to structure, from the atomic element on the periodic table to the gods themselves.
Right. We then explored the impossibility of changing that structure without altering consciousness, which is a non-material process so complex it requires centuries of effort just to untangle human thoughts from celestial ones, all thanks to that cosmic cloud backup of the information retention space.
Which led us to the incredibly appealing shortcut. The promise that we could skip the decades of meditation, bypass the heavy reading, and simply adopt the detached, cheerful, unfettered nature of a celestial being right now.
Only to be thrown into the metaphorical snake pit, where the text slams the door in our faces, reminding us that true celestial detachment is impossible for human hardware, and concluding that unless you were born with celestial roots, ascension is a biological and spiritual impossibility.
It is quite the reality check. And it brings us back to that idea of life hacks and the constant modern pressure to upgrade ourselves. We spend so much energy trying to rewrite our source code, trying to achieve these enlightened, perfectly detached states of being.
Yeah, we really do.
But here's a thought for you to take away. Something that builds on Zhuofeng's text, but challenges our everyday lives. If our nature is inextricably tied to our current human structure, And the text's final, ultimate instruction is simply to stop the wishful thinking and be an honest person. Does our constant striving for spiritual enlightenment actually pull us away from our true purpose?
That's a great point. If the hardware is designed to feel fear, to feel deep affection, and to care desperately about the people we leave behind, attempting to overwrite that might be the real error.
Could it be that the ultimate celestial act for a human isn't to transcend humanity at all, but to fully, honestly, and unashamedly embrace the messy, emotional, deeply attached limitations of being exactly what we are? It is definitely something to mull over the next time you find yourself trying to hack your way out of your own nature. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we will see you next time.